45 your current time, and I want to get you right back here to this cell we're watching very closely in the southwest corner of Cape Coral, now to the east and northeast of St. James City. Now this is the same cell we've been tracking now for the better part of the past half an hour that has been showing some signs of rotation here as it moves toward the east and northeast. Now if you ever wake up in the morning and trees are all over the place, one of two things happened. Either a straight line wind event came through or a tornado came through, and one way you can demonstrate that is by pretending that these popsicle sticks would be trees. Now in the summertime, Allison and I, we track a lot of straight line wind events, and that's when the trees all bend over in one direction just like that, a very strong, powerful burst of wind that can sometimes be as or more dangerous than a tornado. But today, not the case. Reasons why? Because the damage video saw those trees move in some cases two different directions. And we also had, like I just showed you in the video, a lot of trees that looked like this. And whenever you see trees snapped like that, that's a telltale sign that there was definitely something like a tornado moving through because of the spin that happens right over top of those trees. When you track a tropical storm or a hurricane, something you should do is draw one line from north to south and one line from east to west. And that crosshatch, you'll find the northeast quadrant. And that is the worst part of a tropical storm or hurricane. Typically, that is where the most amount of severe weather occurs when a tropical storm or hurricane moves through. And that is where we still find ourselves for the rest of the night tonight. And this is why the National Weather Service will continue a tornado watch until 11 o'clock tonight. But as you know, asteroids can range in size from being really, really small to being really, really big. And this is one of the really, really big ones. To put it into perspective, if we came back down here to planet Earth and took a trip to New York City, one of the landmarks we would probably check out would be this here, the Empire State Building. Now, if somehow we figured out how to take the Empire State Building and shoot it into space, and then while we were in space, we built 3 more just like it, that would give you some perspective as to just how big this asteroid is. It's like 4,800 feet across. The forward speed of a hurricane is really, really important to focus on because typically faster moving hurricanes produce less storm surge than slower moving hurricanes. Reason why? Well, they have less time to collect and push water towards shore. And faster moving hurricanes like Hurricane Elsa, they also oftentimes drop less rain. The reason why is because they are physically over one location for a shorter period of time. Let's demonstrate that using this water bucket. Now, as you know, hurricanes have a lot of moisture, and if a storm is a fast-moving one, yes, it's going to drop some rain, but because the storm moves by so fast, it doesn't really produce a tremendous amount of rain accumulation over any given area. Now, let's compare that with a slower-moving hurricane. So we're going to change our rain gauges here. We'll put a new rain gauge out. Now, a slower moving hurricane has a lot more time to drop a whole lot more rain. And there's some instances like where Hurricane Dorian and Hurricane Florence, they were totally stationary for more than 12 hours at a time. So they have a lot more time as they move slowly along the ocean to drop a whole lot more rain. So the faster a hurricane moves, kind of the better off you are because they have less time to push storm surge towards shore and can produce less rainfall. On the other hand, slower moving hurricanes can mean more dangerous impacts in terms of storm surge and rain production when they move by a local area. And the reason I circled this white area is because that's about where the center of circulation was earlier today, west of Key West. And even though they had a wind gust of 70 miles an hour, the center of circulation earlier today was right to the west of Key West. This white circle here was drawn just a few hours ago based on where the center of circulation was. Now, the most recent advisory that came out from the National Hurricane Center is 1 hour and 33 minutes old. And the movement they had was north at 9 miles an hour. So if you were to draw a storm track from the last placement of where the center of circulation was and put that toward the north at about 9 miles an hour, this is suggesting the center of this eventual hurricane is going to come awfully, awfully close to the coastline of Charlotte County and Sarasota County. In fact, if it holds on its current path and doesn't wobble at all, it will be very close to the Venice area just after midnight tonight. Now, a way you can think of this ACE index is by using units of seashells, something you can find at any of our beaches, right? So the first system of the year, subtropical storm Anna, it wasn't very strong, and it had an ACE index of 1. That's because it was a weak storm that wasn't around for very long. But on the other hand, Hurricane Sam was a really big storm and was around for a long time. It had so much energy, it equated to an ACE index of nearly 54. That makes it the 5th strongest ACE index system on record and the biggest since Hurricane Irma back in 2017. So let's get back to the weather here with a look at what's happening right over top of Everglades City. And just look at the lightning counter here. In the past 15 minutes, we have now had 151 lightning strikes, almost exclusively to the south of US 41 Tamiami Trail. So let us hope that none of these lightning strikes starts a brush fire like we saw yesterday, but that's going to be a concern here because of how electric these storms are right now. Now, unfortunately, bird migration is a pretty dangerous process, and a lot of them don't make it. Over their journeys, a lot of them, more than 20 million in fact, won't make it because they'll run into things like power lines, and an even bigger killer would be big cities. Lit up cities like buildings wipe out an estimated 340 million birds every single year. I know that sounds like a lot, and it is. Nothing compares to the big killer, and that would be cats. Cats actually wipe out more than 2 billion birds every year. There's even some estimates that have it even higher, and that's why birds fly at night. They avoid predators, but they can also see a little bit easier. So the next time we have a high concentration of birds flying overhead, do your part and turn off the lights. Just like how we do with sea turtles, because the birds are using the magnetic field and the stars like this, they get disoriented when they see a bunch of lights flying around. So do your part, and next time we have a high concentration of migrating birds over South Florida, turn off the lights and help to give them a safer trip. They're moving as a unit because they're part of a rain band. So if we were to draw a storm track here on the leading edge of this part of the band and then run it toward the north at 25 miles an hour, which is about the forward speed as being pegged by Doppler radar, we're looking for the arrival of this band of rain, which right now is bringing some real gusty weather to Port Royal and Lely and downtown Naples, to arrive in North Naples by 3:42. But what's been happening is the trade winds, which oftentimes brings Hawaii really nice weather, have taken a step back to a big low pressure system moving across the Pacific Ocean, and the topography of Hawaii plays a big role in this as well. If you were to think of this as a cross section of the Hawaiian Islands, when air from these storm systems moves toward the islands, it can't go through the mountains, so instead it's forced to move up and over the mountains. That cools the air, condenses the air, and turns into some pretty heavy rain, and one of the reasons they're seeing so much flash flooding in much of the Hawaiian island chain. Now, Big Island is where the tallest mountains and volcanoes are in the entire state of Hawaii. So here at the lower parts of the mountain, they still have a bunch of rain, but in the higher elevations of those mountains and volcanoes, it's cool enough in the atmosphere to support snow. So on these very tall mountain peaks on Big Island, they've had several inches of snow over the past couple of days, while every other part of the Hawaiian island chain sees a continuation of flooding rain. Now, it's really tough to put the storm surge values into perspective, so I want you just to look around your house and work with me here as we take a look at the storm surge possibilities outdoors in parts of Louisiana this weekend. Now, for some perspective, it really only takes about 6 inches of moving water to knock a full-grown adult off their feet. Now, with the possibility of storm surge flooding coming to parts of Louisiana this weekend, some frames of reference to have in mind would be 5 feet. That's about the top of a typical car that we would drive around here. Now, throughout the course of this weekend, with the storm surge potential, there is the possibility of saltwater storm surge flooding going above 5 feet and topping out at about 11 feet in some of the most storm surge prone areas. All right, here at 5:45, the latest on Tropical Storm Elsa. If you're just waking up this morning, well, the storm has got a little stronger overnight, and Hurricane Center now suggesting winds are gusting up to 70 miles an hour as it gets awfully close to Barbados. It's less than 80 miles from the east and southeast of Barbados right now, and it's still moving really fast, west and northwest, 28 miles an hour, which is real fast for a tropical system there in that part of the Atlantic. An ongoing event of what's been happening north of Elsa is this big push of the Saharan air layers, this dry, dusty air off the Sahara Desert of Africa that spends a lot of time in the mid and upper levels of Earth's atmosphere, and tropical systems don't like it. Makes it real difficult for them to organize, and sometimes a fully grown tropical system will run into dry, dusty air and kind of just completely fall apart. So how much of an influence this dry, dusty air plays on Tropical Storm Elsa is a big point to keep an ear to the next several days, because the influence of dry air could attempt at least to try and weaken the system as it moves toward the west and northwest. What I wanted to do is show you how the forecast cone from Elsa evolves with the push of Saharan air that you can see in these shades of darker brown that move here toward the north of the system. And throughout this weekend, yes, there is some dry, dusty air around it, but once we get towards Sunday and the 4th of July, a lot of that kind of leaves the atmosphere. So Elsa has less dry air to tangle with as he gets closer toward Cuba, which will bring in a different round of obstacles for it in terms of land interaction over Jamaica or Haiti or Cuba. And then we shall see what the strength of the system is once it gets to the north of Cuba into early next week. So a lot of things for us to watch. A lot can and will change as it gets closer to the Caribbean and over these islands here for the second half of the weekend. So make sure you don't unplug this weekend here, because these are just two of the variables you have to really watch and pay attention to this weekend to get the best idea as to how strong this feature may be as it potentially gets a lot closer to us early next week here in southwest Florida. Right now, though, this morning, not connected to any kind of tropical system, but some tropical air is helping to pick up some showers and downpours this morning. Right now, heaviest is over Bonita Beach and along Bonita Beach Road, and it's all moving east and northeastward because we have winds that are primarily from the west and southwest this morning. What this means is all these isolated showers you see near Collier County's coastline, like near Everglades City, will continue migrating east and northeastward. So throughout the middle part of the morning through early afternoon, we're just going to have to watch and see how many of these isolated showers can hold together, because with west and southwest winds, they'll be encouraged to move toward the east and northeast throughout late morning and then toward the early hours of this afternoon. How the forecast evolves for the rest of the day, though, that's an interesting story. Remember, the winds are from the west and southwest today, so like we talked about, best rain opportunities this morning are primarily to the west of Interstate 75, but a west and southwest wind this afternoon, well, typically that pushes the widest coverage of rain inland east of the interstate, leaving us with lower rain coverage west of the Highway 41 corridor once we get toward the afternoon. 7-day forecast for us. It brings isolated rain coverage for us tomorrow and for the 4th of July on Sunday. And then, of course, next week, it all depends on the track and strength of Elsa as to any potential impacts here at home.